record this lecture. All right. So now, please, if you can see the screen right now, OMIS 605, Information System Security. And this is the course outline for both regular and the weekend MBA. So basically, I'm the one taking the course. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Awuni. And I know that some of you, I met you in the first semester, first year. And then I know that others who were in Dr. Uzi's class and we couldn't meet. So that is my name. My office is UGBS Graduate Campus. It's at UGBS Graduate Campus, room 1W10. And that's my email and my telephone number. So basically, at office hours from Monday to Friday, I'm always in the office. You can reach me at any time. If I'm not busy, I will attend you. If I'm busy, I will tell you that I'm busy. Otherwise, we book an appointment. And Saturdays to 10 to 4 p.m. Sometimes I'll be in the class, not in the office. Anyway, so the course, let me just keep, the objectives of the course. I'll share this on Sakai. You can read it. What information system is all about, information system security is all about, and all that. All right, so this is the recommended text we are going to use for the semester. So Michael E. Whitman Herbert, 2019, Management of Information Security, 6th edition. And also, there are other supplementary materials that are also put on Sakai, so you can go and download. And then, for instance, Ronald L. Cruz book is about safes and also some element of cryptography, which latter part of this semester I will handle. Okay, so prerequisites, there is no prior knowledge required. You don't need to have any knowledge in any area. Of course, you can understand the course. So this is the assessment. Class attendance, which is very important to me, 5% of the total score. Then along the line, you make 1 or 2 presentations, and also I'll give you some assignments, and I'll also carry 25 marks. Then in other words, the midterm also will be 25, and then for the midterm, usually I give 10 paper. I'll give a task for you to write a report on. Then end of semester, I don't like to give online questions. To me, it's easy if you come to write it anyway, but we'll handle that later. So I expect you to make 100% and get your A. So these are the topics we are going to look at this semester. So please, any question up to this stage? Let me know if there is a question. Then I can handle that before I move on to the next stage. Please, is there any question? The class is
not for now. Not for now. We don't have any question for now.
You don't have any. You don't have problem with the assessment.
No.
All right. So now move on. So semester, I think because of the COVID. Oh, there is a background noise. Let me make someone a co-host so that if anyone by mistake enable his microphone, there's a problem, he can mute the person. So let me make who created this? Is it Rafiko? Let me see. Okay, so Gamali, are you there?
Yes, Doc, I'm here.
I'm making you a co-host there. So in case of any issues, if there's a background noise coming from somewhere, just mute the person for me.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so because I have actually given the host to this machine, I'm not able to make a host. Let me see. I need to do that from here. So let me see. So I make you co-host. All right, it's done. Let me quickly go back to the first one. Okay, so week 1, that is today, we are going to look at introduction to information security or information system security. Then week 2, we look at planning for security. Week 3, we look at planning for contingencies. Let me preempt that this course is information system security. Last semester, for some reason, I thought to the extent where I move a bit, technical, but, the department feel like it's IS, it's Management Information Systems, it's an MBA program, so I should limit the technical aspect of it, which this semester I have to do that. So basically, the course is going to focus much on the management of information system security in organization. So week 3, we look at planning for contingencies. And of course, the subtopics are here. Then we look at security policy. Then we move on to developing the security program. And also, within week 6, we look at cryptography. So like I said, we may not focus too technical. The technicalities may be in terms of writing some sort of algorithms and all that. So we look at symmetrical encryption, public encryption, digital signature, key distribution, and then the PGP. So here I'll show you a software. There's a software that you can use to actually encrypt using the asymmetrical cryptography technique, which I will do that when we get there. Then we have the security management models and practices. We look at email security. And then we have risk management. We look at identifying and assessing risk. And then week 11, we look at risk management by assessing and controlling risks. I realized that the semester, because of the COVID, instead of 30 weeks, we are supposed to do for only 11 weeks. I'll try my best to see if you can cover everything. Otherwise, we move on because the cryptography alone will take a lot of time. Anyway, let's see. We'll try our best to finish the content of this course outline. Please, any question up to this stage before I move on? Any question up to this stage? All right, if there's no question, let's move on. And like I said, my teaching philosophy is more of interaction. So let's all interact. I keep saying that there's a lot of things I don't know. So let's interact. If you have an answer to a question, please just respond to it and let's move on. Okay. All right. So I've already introduced myself, and then let me. Okay. So today's lecture is about information system security, but we are looking at the introduction part of it. Okay. Now let me before I start talking about this, let me ask this question. And I know that many of you are doing fine. There are some of you who have done some managerial courses. When you were in first year, you did some courses in human resource management, many courses also in management and what have you. So the question is, what is an asset? When they say asset, what is it? An asset. I just need a raw definition to an asset. When they say asset, what does it mean? Please, the question is the floor is open. So if there's anyone here who wants to respond, you just raise up your hand and I will give you the mic. What is an asset? What is an asset? Oh, no one is responding. No. Okay, Isifu.
Yeah, an asset is any valuable item organization.
All right. So let's take, for instance, in a business organization. Usually, I use bank as an example, or maybe let's take from our various homes. In the house, let's see, in the house, we are talking about an asset or assets. You see that in the house, you are talking about valuable items. You can also refer to it as resources. For instance, we have televisions in the house, or let's say television. Then in the same house, you may also have, let's say, sofa. Can you mention some of the other valuable resources that you have in your homes? You have television, you have sofa. What else? You may have mobile phones also in the house. Can you mention some of them? Yes. What else? Valuable items. Clothes.
Fridge.
Okay, etc. All right. Now, this is an asset. When we consider our various homes or our abode. Now, let's veer off from our various homes to a business organization, a bank, for instance. So if you look at the bank, what are some of the assets or resources of a bank that you can think of? Here, of course, the bank may have, let's say, computers running. Even the human, the people working in the organization, they are all resources. They are all assets. Now, in our homes, I use home as an example. Right here, we have television. And I believe that we try as much as possible, even when we are building house, we try as much as possible to ensure that all these things we call assets, or which are valuable to us, are protected. So for some reason, you build a house and then you have all burglar proof and everything around the house, all because in the name of protecting these assets. Now, when you look at, let's say, in the banking sector, where information is valuable, for an organization to generate an information, of course, in the first year, we look at MIS, and then we establish that information technology has become a necessity for business survival. So IT goes through certain processes. You can use information technology to collect data, analyze that data, and what comes out of it is an information. And the information here can be used to make decisions to help the organization. Now, the resources that is required to be able to collect data, resources that is, let me just open this. Yes. Okay, so resources required to be able to collect data. And then of course, this data can be pushed into an IT system. And then the outcome, which we call information, can be used to make what decision. Now, all I'm saying is that what is required, or the things that are needed to collect this data, process it, and give information out, all contributes to making sure that the organization make informed decisions. Now, all I'm saying is, so if let's say these devices, the information technology devices, you can take a laptop, for instance, or a tablet, and those devices are all ways in which you can use to collect, valuable data, process the data, and give the information. Now, these resources, which I call assets, has to be protected. That is why we are taking this particular course. So there should be a need in a way that these particular devices, the IT devices, can be protected in order to give us information that we can use to make a decision. Now, let me quickly take us to our slide 1. Now, so information assets, I've already explained assets in terms of organization. We say they are just resources, and these resources has to be protected. So when you talk about the protection here, that is where we are talking about security. Now, the devices that are required to be able to collect data, process the data, and give the feedback so that the organization can use that feedback to make decisions. That is what we mean, or what we term as information assets, because information assets involves or focuses on the devices that can be used to collect data, process the data, and give out the feedback, which can be used to make a valuable decision to help the organization. So basically, I'll be using information assets as we move on. So information asset is just a resources of the organization that can be used to collect data, process the data, and give out information. So if I say protection of information assets, I mean protection of our laptops, protection of even the what do we call it, the network, the communication channel. How are we going to protect that in order to ensure that we produce data or information that is not corruptible? All right. So now let's look at the information technology. Information technology from the first semester, first year. If you remember, I spoke a lot about the relevance, importance of information technologies through information systems in business. And I even established that nowadays, businesses are competing well because of what? The innovative way of implementing information technology infrastructure. Now, it has become so critical in business and also in society. If you talk about business, businesses are innovating their processes, automating their processes in order to stay competitively. Of course, we can talk about, let's say, an inventory management system, where that system is able to keep inventory and also collect data and then record information or keep track of data or keep track of assets or resources of the organization. In the level of society, I also, from the first semester, I did explain that even at individual level, we are using information technology to achieve certain utility. For instance, nowadays, people are using IT or mobile phones to take pictures, to even record, certain events and what have you. So what it means is that information technology is critical to business and society nowadays. Now, 2 decades ago or years back, the focus was on computer security, because at that time, computer was more valuable than even the information that is on the computer. So computers were much more expensive than the data and the information that is on the computer. So now computer, in the era of computational techniques, the era has evolved, or computer security has evolved into information security. Now the information has become more valuable and more expensive even than computers. Those times or years back, to even to buy a computer is an issue. I remember, was it my first laptop? Is it 2010 or so? I bought this desktop computer. It was this Pentium 2 or Pentium 1. Do you remember the Pentium era? Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes, bro.
Yes, I remember.
Or this class is full of PS4. Maybe this class is full of PS4. People in the era of PS4. So at the time, if you remember vividly, at the time, the computer was more valuable than the information on the computer. It was very expensive to acquire a computer. And many organizations will spend huge amount of money in protecting the computer rather than the information on the computer. Now it has evolved. So what we used to focus on, that is computer security, has evolved now into information security. So what it means is that information security now subsumes that of computer security. Now, the question is, what then is information security? Information security can be defined in 3 different dimensions. The first dimension has to do with the protection of the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. If you remember from the first slide, I spoke about information assets. So now we are talking about the protection of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. And that is the first dimension. The next dimension is whether it's in storage, the information asset is in storage, processing, or in transmission. That's the second dimension. And the third dimension is through the application of policy, education, training, awareness, and technology. So we shall take them one after the other, especially the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Of course, when we get there, I'll open the floor, then we all have a discussion on them. Okay. Now, information security is actually the responsibility of every member of organization. So if you go to the banking sector, information security, securing our information assets is the responsibility of the security man who is manning the gates. It's the responsibility of the teller. It's the responsibility of the people who are managing the information security department. It is the responsibility of the top management to ensure that information security or our information assets are protected. So if one or anyone within the organization compromises the information security measures or controls, what it means is that the organization is going to be hit hard. It doesn't matter whether you have the best hacker, ethical hacker in organization. If someone compromises any information or anything or discloses any information that someone can use to target the organization, it doesn't matter whether you have the best security expert in the organization. So it is the responsibility of everyone. Mostly with information assets, credentials are created and given to everyone. So it is your responsibility to make sure that you protect it. As we move on, you understand what I mean by the responsibility of everyone in the organization. Okay. Now, any question from here? Any questions? Isifu, go ahead, please.
Hello, Doc. Please,
yes.
How do you protect the processing data?
I cannot hear you well. Can you be a bit louder, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead now.
I'm asking, how can you protect processing data?
How can you protect processing data?
Yes.
Okay, so as we move on, I'll give more details about that. Of course, let me just say something small. When we talk about data in processing, so what it means is that, let's say you have a dump terminal and a server in your organization. When I say dump terminal, what it means is that many of the banking sectors, the workstations are dumb. Meaning, if you have, let's see, let me quickly open this and I can use this display. Okay, so now, in every organization, especially the banking sectors, they have what we call server. Okay, now this server is an intelligent system. I use IS to represent intelligence system. Now, the server, there are workstations, let's say a laptop here, a computer here, another computer here, okay? And these computers are all networked. So this one is networked to this, depending on what protocol or topology you are using. And this machine is connected to the server. Let's assume this topology. So this is connected to the server. So these machines are all dumb. So when I say dumb terminal, meaning that they are not intelligent. They don't have processors. They don't have, memories to be able to process the data. Meaning whatever you enter here goes into the server. So now, if you enter details, maybe a customer comes to you, you are the teller, and he's making some transactions with the bank, that you enter all those details into the system. Now, after that, what you will do is that you just click on submit. When you click on submit, this information goes into the database, the transactional, transactional database or operational database. Transactional database. Now, so this data goes through a link. This is a network. So now the data is going through, so the what do you call it? The transmission. So let's say the data is going through in packets. So in packets means that the data is in transmission. And then, of course, since this one is dumb terminal, meaning that the intelligence system is here. Once it gets here, it will be processed. For instance, if the person type 500 plus 200, this machine is dumb. It cannot combine, cannot add this together. So when it gets here, the 500 plus 200 has to be added. So if this machine, in adding it, meaning that there is some sort of processing. So this one is being processed in the course of what? Adding the 500 to 200. And some of the banking systems are intelligent. The workstations are intelligent. What it means is that the processing can also be done here. So once you type 500 plus 200, it has to combine. It has to add these two and push into the database. And in that, there is what we mean by processing. And that's processing. So the data is being processed. That is adding the 500 to 200. So after that, it has to be pushed into the server. In pushing it, that is where transmission is also taking place. Now, this system can be attacked while the data is processing. Someone can attack the system and then maybe change this value. Of course, you can enter the right values here, but the person will quickly attack it and change the value to 600. Or let's say change the value to zero. And then after that, it will combine and push into the database. So you sitting right in front of the system wouldn't know the outcome, because after the processing, it goes into the database, unless, of course, you want to show in real time. Now, the data being pushed into the database, that is transmission, and it goes in the form of packets. And here, an intruder can intercept it and also make changes to it. And then when the data gets here, it has to also be saved into a database. So there should be some sort of protection here, protection at the transmission, and also protection in the processing. And your question is, how do we protect our system, or how do you protect, data that is what in processing? So now, all you need to do is to make sure that you have all protective tools, or something like intrusion detection software, and you have a real-time monitoring of the system. There are a lot of softwares you can use to monitor the system. So if there's an issue, it will trigger that there's an issue, something unusual. And then quickly you can check and then act upon it. As we move on, some of these techniques will come up. And then the same way, in transmission. And of course, another way of also protecting it is also in the form of encryption or cryptographic technique. So we shall look at some of the cryptographic methodologies as we move on, I think in week 6 or so. So you can do encryption. And then in the web, I know some of you have heard of SSL, secure socket layer. It's also a way of protecting our data. It's also an encryption technique for protecting our data. So for instance, if let's say the teller is here, the teller enters 500 plus the 600. Now, let's assume that this machine is intelligent and the machine has to combine these two before it is pushed into a database. After it is entered, whatever is happening here is hashed or is encoded or is put in a way that cannot easily be read. So that is where we have encryption. And there is a lot of different cryptographic techniques we shall look at as we move on. So that's one way of protecting the data from being hacked when it is in processing or in transmission. Please, I don't know whether I've answered your question. And then when the data is in transmission, that is where you can use SSL, a secure socket layer, to also protect the data while the data is in transmission. And when the data gets into the database, that's where we have the storage. At that moment, you can also the developer can also use cryptographic technique to also encrypt the data whilst in the database. I don't know who asked, Gideon, let me find out from Isifu. Were you the one who asked the question?
Yes, please, Doc. I asked the question.
I don't know whether I've answered your question. I've answered you.
Yes.
Okay, Gideon. Okay, go ahead, please.
That when data is in process, when the data is under processing,
Yes.
no encryption is done or no protection is done on it. When there is encryption or protection, no system is able to process it. That's
hello. I don't know whether I'm the only person. Please, can you hear him?
Hello.
Hello. I don't know whether I'm the only person.
It looks like his microphone is too close to the mouth.
Yes.
His voice is muffled.
Okay. No, you can continue. I'll get back later.
Okay, so please kindly get to a place where you can get closer to your microphone. In that case, I can hear you all. All right. So all I'm saying here is that information security has evolved to information security. In those times, it was computer security. The main focus was the computer. The computer was very expensive and it was more valuable than even information on it. It has evolved. Now, information on the computer is even more valuable than the computer. Nowadays, let's assume that you even lose your mobile phone. Your worry is the data that is on the mobile phone. You don't actually worry about the mobile phone itself. Your worry is about the data. So data is like a crude oil now, very expensive. And then when it is compromised, it can easily cripple an organization. And the definition to information security is just the protection of confidentiality. We talk about them. That's integrity, availability, when it is in storage, processing, or transmission. But in order to do that, we need certain policies to guide this. And then we need to have certain kind of education and training, as well as even use some sort of technologies to be able to ensure that our data, our information asset is being protected or there's a protection of what? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. Gideon, your hand is up. Can you ask your question now?
Doug, yeah, good evening. I just wanted to confirm there was an issue that had to do with two systems communicating. And
yes.
one system sends information to the other system for it to process.
Yes.
But there was an issue, and we were told there was something sitting in between the two systems, and they had blocked what was coming from the other system, and it was sending its own message to the other system for it to process. So in that case, I guess the other system was a server. So how come that was able to happen?
If I go to write, just a minute, I always like to write. I think I'm beginning to like this class. Okay, so you said, let's say there's a system here, right?
Yes.
There's another system here, right?
Yeah.
And then this one is the server, right?
So, so the one you have highlighted is for a different organization. Then the one on
a different organization.
Then this one is a different organization.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So this A picks information and gives to B.
Okay. And gives to B. Okay.
Yes. So
and what's the issue?
An issue happened. There was, let's say, a fraud of a sort, and we are being told information from A was blocked, and there was a system sitting in between A and B, blocking what is from A.
Okay, so meaning that information is not flowing from A to B. Is that what you mean?
So what do you call it? The system in between the two is pretending to be A.
Okay.
And sending information to B. So it's going to be as A. Meanwhile, A is not sending any information.
Okay, so sometimes, we shall look at some of these. Sometimes it may be a security breach. And if it's a security breach, we have what we call denial of service attack. Someone can actually do distributed denial of service attack. That is to say that intercepting, and it's all ways of security breach, and it's also ways of, hacking into a system. So if the transmission is blocked, someone can easily block it. And of course, you receive this information and will not transmit what is right or what is supposed to be transmitted. It can transmit different information. Another thing is, if it's a denial of service attack, he can pick the information and duplicate the information and then send different information to this system just to make the traffic also loaded. In this case, legitimate users are not able to access the system. But in your case, I think that there has been an interception blocking the data from here to this side. And the person can decide to keep a different data and send it to this system, which may not be genuine. For instance, if I send 500 plus 200, maybe to this system to process, here it can easily be intercepted. And of course, this data or these values can be alterated and then sent into the other system. That is why, information system security, or let's say protection of information assets, also is concerned with integrity of the data. Let me see. Gamo Kudu, your hand is up.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
Please, can you go back to the slide?
Yes, I'm going back.
Okay. Doug, my question is on the three key terms. That's confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
They are the characteristics of information security. Yes, move on.
Oh, okay. I think last we went for some sort of training, and they gave us something called element of security, and they provided 5.
Okay.
Including the 3 here, and added authenticity.
Okay, so could you, before you move on, let me, I've just started, and I'm saying that information security originally, that is the definition, and that is what it is.
Okay.
But the confidentiality, integrity and availability encompasses other characteristics, which I was talking about them. Of course, authenticity, authorization, they are all part of it. So they are part of this lecture slides, and I will be talking about them as we go on. So yes, any other, were you going to ask any other question apart from this? Otherwise, I'll move on. Yes, Henry, Professor Henry Mufat.
Please, I have not gotten there yet, please.
Henry, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Doc. Doc, I wanted to ask, can an email also be sent directly to a server to prevent the dormant machines from accessing information?
Wait, I'm not too sure whether it is my system that is not giving me a good sound, because you look as if I cannot hear you very well, all of you. Or is it that, okay, just a minute. Let me check my volume. I don't know why. Why is it like that? Please, just a minute. Okay, Harry, ask your question again.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. I was asking if an email can be sent. Let's say if someone wants to get information or hack information, the person can directly send the email to the server, blocking the dormant machines from accessing information from the server.
Like I said, you know, that's okay. Just a minute. Let me do this. Try to understand the question. I think I have to change my sheet. Okay, so you say that. Okay, so you have email here, right?
Yes,
and
please.
Then, and then
there's a dormant. Yes, there's a server, and then there's a dormant machine. So the
email
has been sent. Yes. So the email has been sent directly to the server, preventing them.
Okay.
Yes, preventing the dumb machines from getting information. It's highly possible.
You mean the email has been sent to the server?
Yes, directly to the server.
Directly to the server. Of course, when you send an email, it goes to a server before it is now directed to the legitimate recipient. And your question is?
But in this case, it has been sent directly to the server without even reaching the recipient.
Without reaching the recipient.
Yes. Yes. So let's say there's a server somewhere. So they send the email there. Yes.
Okay, so this is the recipient.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So the info has been sent directly to the server.
Okay.
So me, the recipient, trying to access another information from the server, I can't get access because of the email.
See, yeah, let me explain this. See, with the email technology, before you can, it uses the IP address. You know, the email addresses are all IP addresses. They're all in a certain format. They are IP numbers. They are unique numbers. Now, before you can even send an email from your system to another system, let's say you want to send an email from your system here to this system, you need the IP of the person you are sending the email to. It's IP. So that is the email address. So when you enter, if it is Yahoo, the message that you send is attached to this IP, and then it goes through the Yahoo server, then it's directed to the recipient. Now, but because of data protection and privacy issues, the data that goes through this server, it goes through it as a form of log, or let's say a record for record's sake, but it does not keep the data there. It quickly routes the data to the recipient. Then, of course, the recipient receives it, and then he can read it and then reply. So I don't know whether this explanation addresses your question. Because if you send an email, and of course here, now, what do you call it, an NLP system, natural language processing system, has been developed in a way that it classifies the data that comes in. So we have classification. So we have, let's say, X and Y. What it means is that X here is a spam, and this one is not spam. And it's an NLP that uses machine learning techniques. So if an email is sent with this IP and it goes into the server, because of the data that has been used to train the NLP system, it determines whether the data is a spam or not before it will route it. Sometimes, even if the data is spam, it route it to your inbox and also route it will route the spam data into your spam inbox and then route the legitimate data into your inbox. So in effect, to be able to send an email, it means that you need the IP or the email address of the recipient. So the IP takes the data or the information or whatever email you are sending. It takes it, goes through the Yahoo server, and then route it to the recipient. I don't know whether what I'm saying is addressing your question, Henry.
Yes, I get it. But the reason why I'm asking the question was I was in one particular institution, and then all of a sudden we got a notification mail that nobody should open a particular mail. Yes. Before the mail could even pop up on anybody's desktop, we were told not to open that particular mail.
Yes.
So I was asking if in this case it's sent directly to the server, or it's sent to a particular person before that notification is being sent across.
No, it goes, you see, that's a channel. And then let me explain. Recently, University of Ghana, we're having a similar situation. I think that the system was somehow hijacked. And then the person who hijacked the system, he managed to get some of the IP or the email addresses of some lecturers. Now, what the person was doing was that he was sending anonymous, or he was sending emails to some lecturers and asked them to act. And mostly the emails that he was sending was phishing, just to be able to get access to certain credentials of the university. So now what the person was doing is that he will send. Once the email is sent, of course, it goes through the server. It will legit, because the person who is sending, the server sees the person as a legitimate user. So he will send it, it goes through the server, and the server will route it to you. But if the organization, out of due diligence, and they're able to detect that the system is compromised, that is where they will issue some sort of warning to legitimate users in the organization that nobody should open an email. What it means is that that email could be a phishing. And I think that as we move on, I will explain phishing, and some may be an adware. An adware, someone can easily put some sort of rootkit into an adware and then send it through email. So when it comes to you as a legitimate user. And then the person, for instance, you, Mufat, let's say you and I are working in one bank, let's say the Ghana Commercial Bank. Then for whatever reason, I compromise my credentials. And there are several ways that you can do to compromise your credentials. Credentials are just the username and password. So if I compromise mine, and an attacker who is ready or who wants to attack the organization get hold of my credential because I have compromised it, he can use my sort of email to send email to other workers in the organization. So when you receive that email, it shows that, okay, this person has sent you an email, so the person is legitimate. Because you know the person in the organization, the email is coming from him. So there are several ways by which an organizational system can easily be attacked. Anyway, maybe I'm not getting your question well, but maybe I've also answered you. But as we move on, let's.
Oh yes, you've answered my question, Doc.
Very good. Any other question? Anyway, otherwise, let's move on. Now, let's look at security model. So this diagram is a security model we call Macumba Cube. It's a model that was developed purposely to guide how organization can protect its assets. Now, the model also gives a complete overview of the nature of the nature of security within business organization. Now, I will talk more about the Macumba Cube as we move on. By this point, it is here because I'm using it to demonstrate the 3 dimensions of information security, the definition to information security. If you remember, I made mention that it is the protection of the confidentiality integrity, availability of information assets, either in storage, processing, and transmission, by developing certain policies, education, and also using technologies to protect these information assets. Now, if you look at it, because it's three-dimensional, meaning that we are talking about three here, we are talking about three here, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and we are talking about three here. So when I multiply these three, I'll get 27. Now, what it means is that this three dimension is also made up of 27 cubes. 27 cubes. Now, this is the cube. Now, if you look at the x-axis, we have storage, we have processing, we have transmission. If you look at the y-axis, we have confidentiality, we have integrity and availability. And then if you look at the z or the z-axis, we have the policy, education, and technology. Now, if you look at this cube, what it means, it gives a complete overview of how gaps, security gaps can be identified and how do you address those gaps. Now, let's look at this cube. Let's call this cube A. Let me call this cube C. And let me call this cube B. Now, if you look at this cube here, within the cube, we have confidentiality. Let me use C. Within the same cube, we have policy, which is here. And within the same cube, we have what? Storage. Now, the interpretation is that for you to protect information assets, for you to protect confidentiality, information assets in organization, then you need to ensure confidentiality of the information assets in storage by developing policies to guide it. That's one about the cube. So that is one of the gaps when it comes to protection of information assets in organization. I'm going to repeat the explanation again. So look at the definition. I said information security is the protection of the confidentiality, integrity, and then the availability of information assets, whether in storage, processing, or transmission, via the application of policy, education, training, awareness, and technology. Since we are talking about the three dimensions, we focus on the policy, education, because the education also encompasses training and awareness, and also technology. Now, with this cube, so we are talking about protection of confidentiality of information assets in storage by developing policy or through a policy. If I take this cube C, for instance, we are talking about protection of availability of information assets in transmission through technology policy, or via policy, or developing policies to help. Now, if you look at B, we are talking about confidentiality here. We also have, I think education also in it. And then we have processing. So you can also say that QB is the protection of confidentiality of information assets. In what? In processing through education or developing certain maybe curricula in order to improve the educational level of the organization. So in effect, when you put all these 27 together, it helps you to be able to identify the gaps within the organization in terms of security or protection of information assets. So my question to you now is that, let me put D here. Can someone also explain cube D with this model? Can someone explain cube D?
Hello.
Isaac, Omani Isaac.
Can you hear me, Doc?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so in D, interpretation of the D is protection of integrity in transmission through, let's say, policy.
Okay, all right, that's cool. And then let me ask let me pick one of the ladies in the class. Priscilla, are you there? Priscilla?
I'm sorry, Doc. Please, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
He said through policy. How does the D correspond to policy?
Okay, very good. So this is the explanation. So we are talking about confidentiality, storage, and policy. Okay. So QA. So this is QA. So confidentiality. And then what is confidentiality? Actually, it will come, I will explain from here going. And then within the same queue, we have what again? I think we have storage. No, okay, no, confidentiality, we have storage. That's QA here. And then we have policy. Okay, so this is the explanation. This is one of the gaps. So you see, when we talk about confidentiality, confidentiality is all about, keeping the data safe and make it available to only those who are supposed to have access to that data. Those who have right to access the data. That is confidentiality. Now, so the data is in database, in storage. Let's say it's in database. Now, to ensure that this confidentiality is protected, then you may need to develop a security policy to guide how to protect this confidentiality when the data is in storage. One example could be that, let us in developing, we can say that in protecting the confidentiality of our data in storage, let us develop a policy that whenever we are developing a system, the database should be encrypted. We should encrypt the database. You understand? So this can be part of a policy to guide the confidentiality of this confidentiality of the data in storage. That is what I don't know whether I've answered you here.
Please, I perfectly understand. Hello, sir. Yes. I do understand the explanation you are giving, but then I'm talking about the answer Omani gave, that with the QD, when you look at the D, the answer he gave.
Maybe I didn't hear Omani. Omani, what did Omani say? Okay, let me ask. Omani, what was your response? Okay, so D, right?
Yeah, I said the protection of the integrity.
Omani, it seems you're a bit far away from your device. I cannot hear you. Yes. Hello, Omani, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that the protection of integrity in transmission through policy.
Policy. Okay.
So the policy aspect is where shouldn't it be based on the technology or something?
Okay. So here, what it means is that let me just pick my pen again. Okay. Sorry, I think my pen is not coming. Let me quickly. Okay, so all right. So now, so D is here, right? Oh. Okay, so in D we have integrity, and then we have policy, and then we have transmission. So when you talk about integrity, data integrity, what it means is that the data should be complete. It should not be corruptible. For instance, if you're a teller and you key in, let's say, an amount, 5,000 cedis at a transaction processing interface, the expectation is that this same 5,000 should go into the database as is. So if the data is alterated in the course of the processes, in sending to the database, and then the 5,000 is alterated or is corrupted, then we say that the data is no longer holding that sense of integrity. So there's a problem in terms of integrity. It is not whole. It is not complete. The person sent 5,000, but going into the database is no longer 5,000. In other words, you can say that the data has been compromised. Another way to talk about integrity is that sometimes you may have certain file on your system, and then this file is so dear and important to you. And at some point, you realize that the file is corrupted. So you open the file and the file is not open. So what it means is that that particular file does not hold that sense of integrity again because the file is corrupted. That is what we mean by integrity. Because if the integrity of the data is questionable, then there's a problem. There's a huge problem. It can affect decision-making in the organization. So for D, we have integrity, we have policy, and we have transmission. What it means is that if I'm sending, let's say, data, or let's say a key in 5,000, that is supposed to go into a database. So in transmission, the 5,000 going into the database and it is compromised. In transmission, maybe it is being intercepted. And whoever intercepts could even make alteration, could even make modification in the amount. It could even increase the amount. If the amount is increased, what it means is that the data has integrity issues or integrity problem. So now, policy is very important. Policy is developed to actually help change behavior. It influences behavior. So you need to develop certain policies even to guide how data are being transmitted through a network. So that is why we have policy there. And I think that in one of our lectures, I think lecture 2 or 3, we shall be looking at policy, security policy. Prince, I don't know whether I've answered you.
Yeah, I get the explanation for the individual terms, okay, but then
yes,
how you link it to the policy is from the quadrant or from the graph is where I'm kind of confused. But
okay, so even with the explanation I gave you, it's not still clear, right?
Oh no, I do understand the explanations you've given me.
Okay.
All right. It's okay. Let's proceed.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I'm trying to get my pen back. Just a minute. I think I have to. Okay, so let's move on. Of course, I'll talk a bit more about the cube as we move on. Now, the question is now, with all what I have explained, what then is security? Of course, security is the quality or state of being secure, to be free from danger. So security is achieved using several strategies simultaneously. So as we move on, we shall look at some of the strategies that can be used to ensure that our information assets are all secured. And I believe, and I remember that when I started this lecture, I started by talking about assets. Then someone actually gave a very nice explanation in respect of assets. Then I moved further by talking about information assets. Now we are here talking about security, meaning that this information asset has to be protected. And I believe that some of you have even asked questions that have even gone ahead to give more explanation in respect of that. So now let's look at, since this course is management information systems, and then we need to also look at the management aspect of information security. Management aspect of information security. Now let's look at the communities of interest in any business organization. So information security actually involves 3 distinct communities of interest. So we have the information security community, we have the IT community, we have the business community. Now, in the information system security, like I said, many of the business organizations are now creating a department for InfoSec, department for information security. So they are very much interested when it comes to protection of information assets. Then the IT community, you can talk about the network, those who are into network, those who want to support services, those who are into hardware, and those who are into software development. They are all in the IT community, and they also have interest in security. For instance, a software developer develops a software to make sure that the software will not have any unintended backdoor so that an attacker can attack the system. That is why in every organization we have ethical hacker. So the responsibility of the ethical hacker is to conduct something we call penetration testing to ensure that the system is robust and free from external intrusion. So they are also very much interested in the security issues or security affairs in the organization. And then lastly, we have the business community. That is where we have the non-technical people, including the managers and also professionals. They are also very much interested in security. Now, let me connect this one to the Macumba cube. In this cube, to be able to protect this confidentiality and also confidentiality in storage and also with policy, you need all these three key people, all these three community of interest to sit together and then make sure that confidentiality is protected. So when it comes to the confidentiality, those people in the security, information system security will help in terms of the confidentiality aspect. Then we have people in the community, when IT community, when it has to do with, let's say, software developer developing something to help protect information assets, they are also part of it. And when it comes to the policy development, to develop a policy to guide the protection of this confidentiality in storage, then you also need, managers and people with expertise in policy development to guide the process. So in every cube, you need all these three community of interest to also help. I know that many of you are already IT experts, and then you're also security experts in your respective business organizations. You realize that even to come out with something to help the organization, you need certain people on the table so that you can take a decision. If you want to develop a program, you want to develop a software, introduce software to help the organization, you need all these community of interest to be part of the processes. And then the InfoSec community involve security managers and professionals. The information technology also involve managers and professionals in IT space. And also we have the non-technical business managers and professionals also being part of the protection of information assets. Okay, now let's look at specialized areas of security when it comes to the protection of information assets. We have the physical security. That's one specialized area in information system security. We have the physical security, and the physical security is just about the protection of physical items, objects, or areas from unauthorized access and the misuse. If you remember, I said years back, the main focus was on the computer. And because it was on the computer, they were actually developing a very strong physical space, a very strong physical measures or security measures to protect these computers. You have just a single laptop, and you can see a whole lot of buildings, protecting the computer. And nowadays, yes, you need to also protect our physical devices, especially if we go to the banks. Our server has to be protected. And then this one specialized area you can also look at. Then we have a personal, personal security. Personal security is also very important when it comes to protection of information assets. Yourself, you should be able to protect yourself in a way so that you cannot translate whatever issues you have into the organization. And then we have the operation security. So that one is also the protection of the details of an organization's operations and activities. So day-to-day activities, operations within the organization, you need to ensure that they are also highly secured. Then we also have this communication security. For instance, nowadays, almost everyone is having a mobile phone. So if I pick my phone to call another person, then I have to ensure that I follow certain security protocols in order not to compromise my device. Then we also have a network security. So this technically also focus on network. And then we have information security. Even though information security is mostly concerned about the information. However, you cannot talk about information security without adding the communication and the network security, and also the computer security. So nowadays, information security subsumes that of network, communication, and also computer security. You remember I said earlier, the focus was only on the computer security. But now you have information security, which subsumes that of computer, network, and communication. But these are other security aspects which may not be part of IT space. Physical security, we have the personal security yourself, operation, day-to-day activities of the organization. And of course, operation security could somehow also be linked with information security. Any question? Any question? Oh, please. Okay. So if there is none, let's move on. Now, the next is to look at categories of threats to information security. And I know that many of you are familiar with this. And I would like to open the floor. I remember some of these terminologies I did explain during the MIS Year 1 course. But I just want to still open the floor and then we all share ideas. So categories of information security. If you look at this table, you have the category of threats and also the attack, example of some of the attacks. Now let's pick the first one, compromises to intellectual property. I remember we somehow spoke about intellectual property. What is it? Is there anyone in the class who can help us explain, who can explain or give examples in respect of copyright infringement and the piracy? And how do you think that one is a threat? Hello? Henry.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. With the copyright and piracy, let's take, for example, some couple of years ago, in the Western world, let's say when they act Rambo and all those movies and the Chinese movies, they were doing a copyright where they put all on one CD, 10, 15 movies on one CD, and then they'll just sell it out at a very cheap price. So I think that was compromising the real industry work. They're not really getting their money back.
Yeah.
And that was a threat to them.
Yeah. So you realize that all these threats, some of them are technical and some are not non-technical. For instance, with the issue of the piracy and then copyright infringement, it's non-technical. Like I think, was it the 2000 where some Ghanaians would just pick Nigerian movies and put them on one CD and be selling them. So it was just something non-technical. You don't have to actually intrude or access a system without authorization before you can do that. Now let's look at the next one. The next one, deviations in quality of service. And this is also non-technical. Sometimes it will just happen. Like the internet service provider, power, and then one service problem, so anyone in the class who may want to throw more light on this. Deviations in quality of services or service. Anyone in the class who may want to throw more light on this. May I call, let me see, Linda. Linda, sir, are you there?
Yes, please, I'm here.
Do you want to say something? Of course, if you don't want to, you can say that you don't want to, and I'm okay with that.
Okay, please, I don't want to.
Okay. Isifu.
Yes, for example,
do you want to throw more light on this, Isifu?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Isifu.
Am I loud and clear?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, let's say you have an ISP like Vodafone. You procure internet service or a network link from them, and then
the quality you agreed on is not being provided.
Very good. So how does that one become a threat? So as you said, maybe your organization is actually running on, or maybe they subscribe their services from an ISP, let's say MTN. Then at a point, you need their services to be able to firm up your communication with your customers. Or maybe you are even expanding your customer base, but because of the services that the internet service provider is giving, because the service is poor, it may affect and then push customer away. And when the services are poor, for instance, if I'm a customer to your bank, then I am actually calling the bank. Maybe I'm in a critical situation, I'm calling the bank for them to solve a problem for me. Or let's say my Visa card is compromised. And I realize that someone is using my Visa card to take money from my account. So I cannot actually block the Visa card. All I need to do is to just call my bank and tell them that my Visa card is compromised. Then you pick MTN or you pick whatever, you call in. When you call, it's not going. Anytime I thought you die, it will cut, What happens? It means that by the time you even manage to get a call through, then the money in your account will be long gone. And the same way can also be applied to power. Sometimes when there is uneven power fluctuation, it can even affect the organizational asset. Then also when you have a network issues, problems can also serve as a threat to running of the business. Another one is the espionage or trespass. This is where organizational data can be accessed without authorization and probably sell to another organization. Or there could be someone who works in organization A and then steal data from organization A and sell it to organization B, which is a competitor to organization A. Let me give an example. Recently, we were contacted by a bank in Ghana. I will not mention the name of the bank. What they wanted us to do is that they wanted us to find a way, whatever means, whatever way, to get data from their competitors. So the company A wants us to go and find data from their competitors and then analyze the data, apply all computational techniques, including the data mining, the NLP techniques, and provide the findings to them. So that when they get a finding, they can, based on that, and make certain decisions that can help them actually stay competitive. For some reason, we decided to, of course, we try to work on it, but we give some limits because you cannot just hack into a system and go and steal the data, which, we have laws also protecting individuals here. So something like that. So unauthorized data, or you collect data from an organization and sell it to another organization. Then we also have forces of nature, like fire, floods, earthquakes, and lightning. This is another threat, which is common. And that one, I don't even need to throw more light on it. Then the human error or failure. Accident can occur, employee mistakes. An employee can decide to write his credentials. Maybe he has password and email, password and username that he uses to access the organizational system. And then he writes it on a paper and keep it in his or her wallet. Mistakenly, maybe lose the wallet. That credentials can be used to access the organizational asset. And that is a mistake. So that's also another threat. And we have the blackmail, information disclosure. Information disclosure is about disclosing information of the organization, either intended or unintended. Someone could just be working there, and then because there is some package coming to the person, he can decide to disclose certain vital information in the organization that he or she is working to a competitor. That is to a competitor, what do you call it, with clear intention of doing so. And sometimes you may do so without having clear intention of doing so. And then an attacker can also hijack certain information and also use it to blackmail the organization. Then we have the sabotage and vandalism. These are other, please, you can go and then read around them. I'll share the book and everything with you. Of course, viruses, worms, microbes, denial of service attack, and then equipment failure. Sometimes too, it could be a technical problem, like bugs in the programming. When you're coding, you may have some errors within the code, then code problems, then unknown loopholes. You may also write a program. You develop a software, you write the programs, and you realize that you have done something that creates a loophole for other person or someone to intrude without you having any knowledge or idea about what you have done. Then we have outdated technologies. Nowadays, new technologies are coming up. New devices are coming up. So if it's outdated, you have to throw it away and get a new one. And once there's a new one, it comes with strong security features. But if you keep on using the old system, meaning that, you are compromising your own organizational assets, that is data and others. So I remember some of us, bought Pentium 1 and Pentium 2, assuming that a bank or organization is still using Pentium 1 today. Pentium 1 security features is not as strong as compared to the current, systems that we have. I've already explained information security, and I said now information security also subsumes that of the computer securities. And now we have data, we have network security, and also security management. These are a bit technical, so you need to introduce the management aspects in it so that you can have a complete InfoSec. Now, the management aspects, we could also link a policy to it. So information security includes or encompasses the security management, the computer security, the computer itself, the firewall, making sure that you develop a strong firewall to prevent intrusion. And then data security, the data itself. How do you protect the data? You can use SSL to protect the data through in transmission. Then a network security. How do you also ensure that your network is well secured in order to avoid or prevent intrusion? In all this, you need policy to guide this. You need policy to guide this. In our next lecture, we shall look at policy, security policy in detail. Now, any question? Hello. And yes, Thomas.
Yes, sir. Please, if you go back to the slide before you came here, under theft, can you classify ransomware as one of the theft cases, like the first one, the last one?
Yeah, so ransomware can be, ransomware is part of blackmail. Ransomware is part of the blackmail. Where's blackmail? Somewhere here. Where's blackmail? Ransomware is part of information extortion, yes. So ransomware, is just someone getting hold of certain vital information or data about organization, and they request that organization pays certain amount of money before they release, the data. Yes, so it's a form of blackmail. Yes, so it's also a threat. These are just examples. You can add more. All right, so components of information security. I said, yes. Okay, Bennett, go ahead, please.
I wanted to throw a little light on the ransomware as well.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I also know that like ransomware is also part of software attacks, whereby you get probably a virus on your machine, whereby it denies you access to the machine. So you have to probably enter some code that you don't have before you can access the machine. Even if you restart the machine, you still have that function on your machine. So normally what they will do is they will tell you probably to send maybe some Bitcoins to some address, then they will release the code to you so they can access the machine. So that's an example of ransomware. So
yeah, Bennett, thank you very much for the example you gave. Yes, so there's a lot you can even talk about it, even with worms, or let's say virus. Some people can even use virus to demand for money. You find a way to get a virus into your system, and the virus can hijack everything. Your machine will not work, do anything, if you want to open your vital files, you'll not be able to open it. So you may have to, someone who actually deploy that virus will send an email that, okay, if you want to get your files back, pay this amount of money to this account, then I'll release the file. Yes, thank you very much. So, yes.
That is where my confusion is. The last one, you say, yes. If you look at the examples that you gave, yes. Illegal confiscation of equipment or information. So the person has actually take hold of your data. If you don't pay it, it's like you're not going to get it. So if it's a blackmail, that is where I really don't understand, because the person has actually. Okay.
Let me clarify your confusion here. You see, if you talk about illegal confiscation of equipment or information, I can illegally confiscate it, but I don't have in any interest in collecting money. I'm just interested in confiscating it. Maybe I work for Bank A, and then, or let's say Bank A has contracted me to make sure that, or to do something that will make your business not running smoothly. All he's interested in is to make it ineffective. He can even decide to make it such a way that a legitimate users accessing their system will not be able to access the system. So his interest is that he just wants your firm or your organization to run down. He's not interested in collecting money from you. But when it comes to the blackmail, after confiscating it illegally, then he demands that you pay a certain amount of money, or he pays something before he releases it to you. So there are two different things. Okay. I don't know whether I've been able to clear your confusion. So yes, just confiscating it illegally, the interest may not be to take money or something. There are a lot of people, there are people like that, especially the script kiddies. There are some people, they are script kiddies. Script kiddies are those who cannot write script. They cannot actually write script to hijack a system or let's say hack into a system. But script that has already been written, they use it, manipulate it, and then cause problems. Sometimes they just want to test their own skills. So these people, their interest is not to actually make money, but their interest to test their knowledge in terms of what do you call it, cyber security, or let's say what do you call it, hacking. So Michael is saying that, please, is it the same as vandalism? Okay, so we all know vandalism in the lay perspective, but when it comes to IT, usually we say that cyber vandalism. So as Michael is saying, cyber or vandalism can also be, hello, can somebody mute me? Michael. Hello, Michael. Okay. All right. So now, even though that's a classification, but there is also where you can link the sabotage or vandalism can rather be linked somehow to theft in a way. I think that the theft here, well, we are talking about illegal confiscation of equipment or information or stealing the hardware devices and all that. But sabotage or vandalism can also somehow be linked to that, because with the theft, I say stealing. The stealing can also be to even go and take the physical server and take it somewhere. But when it comes to vandalism, it's similar to, you can connect it somehow to the theft. They are all, because if you're stealing, meaning that you're also sabotaging the activities of the organization. Some people may even go as far as do what we call cyber vandalism. Instead of actually just destroying systems, they can even intrude into your system and then put certain things there that can make you unpopular. For instance, let's say you have two people running for a president. Both of them have websites, candidate A, candidate B. Candidate A can decide to hijack candidate B's website and put pornographic pictures there on that website just to make the person unpopular. So that one is an example of cyber vandalism. So the theft stealing, he will just go steal the device. Let me give an example. In 2018, when I came to Ghana, take up the University of Ghana appointment as a lecturer. I came, by then I was having a laptop. And this laptop, for some reason or whatever reason, I left the laptop on my table and the table was closer to my sliding door. I got up and I realized that the laptop wasn't there, meaning the person opened the sliding door and took the laptop away. Now, this person may be someone who don't even have knowledge. He has no knowledge about how even the computer operates. He doesn't have any knowledge about it. So for some reason, he just took my laptop away. That is theft. His interest is just go and sell it and make his money. But with a sabotaging, the person may know, maybe on the with my laptop, there is a lot of things on it that I do that is benefiting me. And I have someone who knows that this laptop is benefiting me. So the person can decide to find a way to steal it. And the mindset is to just to sabotage my activity, to sabotage the work that I'm doing. So sometimes it's the intention behind it. If you look at theft, it's the intention behind it. And then also the sabotage of vandalism is also the intention behind it. Henry.
Yes, Doc.
Yes, your hand is up. Or is the
yes, Doc, I wanted to ask if the first attack is an example of either either theft or the other one.
What attack?
DOS attacks.
Say it again.
DOS attacks.
DOS attacks.
Yes, I wanted to know if it's an example of a theft or it is an example of the. Please go back one slide.
Well, so with that attack, I think we can. Yes, we can classify that as part of theft. You know, these are not casted in stone. Somehow, some of them can even be placed under, because even with theft here, this illegal confiscation of equipment, we can also place it under, what do you call it, sabotage or vandalism. Like I said, it's just the intention. So I can even put this one also under this one. So sometimes, and even with the technical hardware failures and errors, we can even place also this here. Because nowadays, even the hardware for the hardware work anyway, you also could, you need to also write some scripts. And then, so yeah, POS, we can place it under theft, yes. And then, let me see.
Software attacks.
Say it again. Yes, software attacks, very good.
Yes,
software attacks, very good. Okay, so now let's move on. So now let's look at into details the CIA or the triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, I remember one of you asked a question regarding other characteristics of information security. Yes, when the evolution of computers came, especially when we begin to generate massive data sets, the focus was more of the confidentiality, integrity, and then the availability. And like I said, the confidentiality is where whatever information and data is made available to legitimate users, those who are supposed to have access to. They are made to access the data. So if someone accesses information or data without authorization, it means that there's an issue of confidentiality here. And then also the integrity has to do with the data being complete, incorruptible, complete and incorruptible. What it means is that the data is free from error, or information is free from error, is not corrupt. If I have a file on my system, and then the file is protected in such a way that you can, of course, have antivirus to protect the file in such a way that the file will not be corrupted. And then the data in it cannot easily be altered by anyone, meaning that the integrity is high. Then the availability has to do with the data being available at all times when you need it. And the availability is not only about, the availability is not about making it available to even unauthorized users, but rather you make it available to people who are supposed to have access to that data. Now, there are other, as time went on, these three characteristics, there were some other, characteristics that emerged, especially with the evolution of when the internet began to generate massive data, and also organizations also decided that they want to now automate their processes. So these characteristics went a bit further. However, these are the key characteristics of information security. So over time, the list actually increased. Now let's look at some of I think I've explained the Makimba, cube. All these have been explained. And then I will talk about the weakness here, but before then, let me quickly move on to the other characteristics. Okay. Well, we said confidentiality. Information ensures that only those with sufficient privileges may access certain information. Then, to protect confidentiality of information, a number of measures may be used, including the information classification, secure document storage, application of general security policies, education of information custodians and end users. I think that in one of the lectures, is it second lecture or third lecture, we shall have more explanation in regards to confidentiality. But for now, is just to ensure that only those with privileges may access certain information. If you're a developer, you develop a system. Maybe you want to develop a system where students can access the system. At some point, you may also want to have an admin to access the system. So what is available to the student may not be available to the admin. And what is available to admin may not also be available to the student. For instance, if you take a bank, for instance, I'm a customer, I'm using a banking app. The interface that I use is not the same as the interface that the admin will also be using, because the admin has no right, he has no privilege to access my bank account or my details. Okay. Then the integrity, which I did explain. I said is the quality or state of being whole, complete and uncorrupted. So the data is with high integrity if it is a whole, complete, and then it's not corrupted. So the integrity of information is strengthened when it's exposed to corruption, damage, distraction, or other disruption of its authentic state. This is, you have a file. Maybe the file contains vital information. It could be your credentials to accessing a certain university system. Then you have it on a system, and for some reason, you go to open the file and the file is not opening, meaning that the file is corrupted. And then if the file is corrupted, it means that there's an integrity issue. So that's what, and availability is making information accessible to users without interference or obstruction in the required format. So a user in this definition may be either a person or another computer system. Yes, so you have a server, and the server has been made in such a way that certain people with certain rights can access certain information, even if it is an enterprise resource planning system. The marketing aspect, data at the marketing aspect may not be accessible to data at the human resource management system. Another system may be connected to the ERP system where the data may be pushed into that system. And this system could be data warehousing. And I know that some of you may opt for business intelligence next semester. Next semester, you'll meet me, we'll be doing business intelligence. And then we look at the conceptual aspect of business BI, and also, of course, we teach a Tableau as a visualization tool. And then business intelligence, what we call data warehouse. So a transaction processing system. Please, am I being fast? And then are you actually understanding what I'm doing? If you don't, please let me know.
So I'm okay.
We understand, Doc.
Oh,
Doc, I'm back.
Are you sure?
I'm back.
I understand, sir. You understand.
Internet went off.
Let me ask now, Abigail.
Hey, Doc.
Abigail, am I being fast?
No, please.
I hope it's okay.
It's okay.
We thank God. What about Linda, sir?
Doc, please, it's okay.
Amen. So let's move on. And then, so these are other concepts. So privacy. I don't know whether it was Samuel or who asked this question. So privacy is now one of the key characteristics of information security. So privacy is, of course, information is to be used only for the purpose known to the data user. So we are all entitled to the data that we have on our mobile phones. That is why sometimes we just have to set PIN. You want to protect your privacy. And there is Data Protection Act 2012 that is also helping to protect our privacy. So if your privacy is compromised illegally, you can take the person on. Okay, and privacy has also become one of the key concepts or key areas in terms of information security. Now, identification. You know, previously, many of our websites and our systems were static. So it wasn't dynamic. When they say static and dynamic, what it means is that when a website is developed, they only keep information on the website. So people go there to read the information. There is no login for you to access certain data. It's just putting the information on the website that you just go and then read or watch. And that's why we have the Web 1.0 technology. I know that many of you have heard of Web 1.1, Web 1.0 technology. Now we somehow advanced to Web 2.0. So the Web 2.0 brought about dynamism in websites, meaning that with a web interface, you can access information from a database. So a database is developed and linked to the web interface, usually with PHP, which is, or maybe nowadays you can even use Java and all that, as a server scripting language, where when you can even fill a form, of course, the investor, when you are applying for your program at University of Ghana, you have to go online and fill a form. So the PHP or JavaScript takes the data and push it into a database. So there's element of dynamism here. And that's where we move to Web 2.0. And then from the era of Web 2.0 also brought about identification. Before you are able to access a system, for instance, you need to be identified. So information system possesses the characteristics of identification when they are able to recognize the individual users. So you need to be recognized before you can even access the system. If you're applying for a master's degree program at University of Ghana, and you need to go online to fill a form, you need to be identified by the system. That is why you have to go to the bank, make certain payments, and the bank will give you the credentials. They can use that credentials to access the system. Now, after that, once you access the system, now we have authentication. The system has to authenticate to make sure that it is really you, Abigail. It is really you, Ruben, who is using the system, because already your credentials are also populated in the database. So you need to compare what is in the database to ensure whether it's really you before it gives you the authorization to use the system. So authentication occurs when a control provides proof that a user possesses the identity that he or she claims. So after the authentication, nowadays, there's even a two-way authentication. Sometimes, even if you log in, if you enter your credentials, automatically the system will send an email into your email to go there and click on a link to verify that it is really you before you can now access the system. That is two-way authentication or two-factor authentication. Yes, Bennett, yes, very good. Two-factor authentication. All right. Now, after the system has actually authenticated that, oh, this is you, then the next step is that it then gives you the authorization to access whatever information you want to access. And the authorization is limited to you. After the identity of the user is authenticated, a process called authorization provides assurance that the user has been specifically and explicitly authorized by the proper authority to access, update, delete the content of information assets. So for instance, let's say that we develop a software, and this software has admin page and it has the student page. So the students access this software, admin can also access this software. Going through the identification, the authentication, and then the authorization to get into the system, meaning that you can only access what you can or what you can access. There are certain things that you cannot access, which is not actually meant for you. It will not be made available to you. For instance, maybe you want to make modification to your profile. The system may be developed in such a way that you can make modifications to your profile, but you cannot delete your profile, meaning that you are only authorized to use the aspect that you are mandated to use. So now the next is also accountability. So if you can be identified, authenticated, and also given the authorization to use, that the login is yes, to use, then you should be accountable to anything at all that you do. So right now, the University of Ghana ITS system or the MIS system, for instance, we have a grading system where at the end of every semester, after you have done all the markings and all that, you need to log into the system and enter student grades. Now, 2 lecturers may be taking the course and then maybe taking one class. In the class, you have 20 students. One lecturer is taking 10, another lecturer is taking 10. And every lecturer is responsible for his or her own students. So now, after lecturer A has done marking and getting the score, whatever, he has to go into the system and enter for his student, his or her student. The second lecturer also go into the same system and enter for his or her student. So let's say in a course of time where lecturer A access the system again and go to the students that are assigned to lecturer B and make changes to their grades. What happens is that the system has a lock system. It has a lock system. So the lock system is to ensure that everyone is accountable to whatever he or she does. Now, the date that the second person will get into the system to make certain changes, that date is actually recorded in the system, the log that lecturer A got into the system on this day, and these are the changes that the lecturer made. So in case there's an issue or there's a problem, now when they are doing forensics or let's say investigation, they can easily establish that on this day, this grade was changed and the problem is associated with this grade. In this case, is this lecturer or this person who is responsible. So that's, yes, audit trail. So basically, accountability is there to help in audits. And I know that many of you may be interested in going to write certification in electronic auditing. I think, is it CISA or one of these certifications? ISACA. Go and do research on ISACA. There is a certification for electronic auditing.
Yes,
ISACA. Very good. So there's a certification for electronic auditing. And I know that many of you may be interested. go and explore, and you can even take the certification so that you become an audit, electronic auditor. All right, so now with this information security, to get it implemented, whatever controls that you want to put in place to protect information assets, then there's a need for us to plan. Now, planning is lecture 3. So in lecture 3, we shall look at it into details. Planning for security. What is planning? Planning as part of InfoSec management is an extension of the basic planning model discussed earlier, of course. We shall talk about it later. So planning encompasses design, creation, implementation of information security strategies. So they are just strategies that you put in place to achieve your organizational goals. So a security strategies that you need to put in place in order to achieve the goals of the organization. Like I said, lecture 3, we shall look at planning to details. Then we have InfoSec planning types. Last year, I asked them to go and read around these and then come and make submissions. We have incident response, business continuity, disaster recovery. I think this lecture will, not this one per se, but the course will talk into details policy. We shall look at contingency, where incident response, business continuity, and disaster recovery, they're all part of contingency. And contingency is lecture 4 also. Okay, so let's move on. Now, let's look at it briefly, policy. You remember I made mention that with the computer security, the data security, and other security measures, you need policies to guide this. So a policy is a set of organizational guidelines that it takes certain behavior within the organization. That's the definition to a policy. Now, in information security setup, all organizational policies are classified or categorized as follows. We have the general program policy, which we also refer to as enterprise security policy. And I know that many of you are already working in IT departments, and there are certain policies that are guiding your behavior. Even email, the use of emails in organization. You need to develop some policies to guide how organizational users are using emails in organization. And then we have a policy called bring your own device. I know some of you have that policy as well. So all those policies can be classified under these 3. We have what we call enterprise security policy, issue specific policy, and the system specific policy. And these, we shall handle them in details in lecture 3 or lecture 4. But these are just to give an overview that we shall look at them later. Okay. So I want you to, what time is it now? Okay, we have 4 minutes. So this is an assignment. I want you to go and do a small search on it. And the next week, when we meet, you tell me briefly what you found. You can go and read around these policies briefly, and then you search your institution's intranet or website for security policies. And find out if you find enterprise security policy. What issue-specific security policy can you locate, and are all these policies issued or coordinated by the same individual office? Are they scattered throughout the institution? All right. So I'll leave this class. I'll end the class now. Then we continue next week. So this is just an introduction to information system security. So next week we continue from where I'm stopping now. Any question?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Please, with the assignment, when are we submitting it, or are we
No, you're not submitting. I just want you to go and do it. Just do a bit. Ask for assignment to come. This just go and read around. Do something about it. Just go and read. For instance, just search your institution intranet or website for security. Do you find it enterprise? So try to understand the definition to enterprise security policy. In effect, I want you to have an understanding of this policy. Then you can now search your institutional website to see whether you find some of these policies. All I will need next week is that I'll ask you, maybe probably you tell me briefly about what you found, and then whether there's also issue specific policy and enterprise, something like that. So it's not something I want you to do assignment and stuff.
Okay, sir. All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So any other questions? Any other question, please?
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes, so Prince, go ahead.
So, please, will we be doing anything in regards to like hacking or something like that?
Say it again.
Will we be stating something on hacking, like penetration test and those kind of things in security?
You see, when I started, I made mention that at some point, especially last year, I was a bit technical for some reason. But I was told that because this is a business school, so the main focus should be at the management aspect. But of course, we are not going to do that, but we shall do what we call it, cryptography. And then because it's a management school, I also handle the aspect of PGP. If we were to be doing we're to be in computer science department, yes, we may have to do something like some few of this penetration testing, and also even some basic script kiddies and what have you. But this the main focus
SQL injection and those things.
SQL injection and all, yeah, exactly. They are all, yes. But unfortunately, like I said, I know that some of you may be interested in but for some reason they felt I was taking the course to computer science way. So the main focus is to look at the management aspect. That's why
maybe after completing, for curiosity's sake, you can just walk us through those areas.
Yeah, even with I think next semester. Yeah, next semester I'll even be teaching you software engineering. I remember the same way. Software engineering, I actually taught Python programming. I taught how to program in Python, how to do machine learning, build a predictive model with machine learning. I even have some of the tutorials. Like I said, it was as if I was better. Even though I would teach it next semester, I taught machine learning, deep learning, and those things. And we're programming. I taught Python, how you can leverage NLP, machine learning techniques too. But anyway, Bennett, your hand is up.
Yeah, about the triangle, CIA triangle.
About
the CIA triangle.
The triad, yes.